And welcome to this week's IG Live. I have a treat for you today because today we're taking a break from some of what we normally do and talking to a podcaster, although he's also an author. So some of it will be very familiar ground. But as you know, we are all about talking about inspiration and motivation. And so we are going to be talking to a speaker and podcaster. Hold on just a second. So get him on here for you. So I'm really excited. He is very familiar with doing interviews. So, man, I'm going to learn a few things too. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
How you doing? How you doing? Thank you for having me. I am so grateful you came to my platform and even offered the invitation. It's always an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure whenever this happens, man. So I'm always thankful and grateful.
Well, we are grateful for you for joining us and excited to have you here. So why don't we start off? Maybe you can just introduce yourself to people that don't know you and just tell us a little bit. You wear a lot of different hats, so maybe you can tell people a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Seanathan Polidore, known on social media as Sean P. I am the host of the Sean P Experience, where I interview authors, illustrators, editors, bookstagrammers, just creatives in general, to bring their skill set to the community. And my show is real big on the how. I want to know the mechanics of how you're doing this thing. So hopefully us everyday mortals can replicate some of that success, right, in our everyday lives. Also, besides that, like you mentioned, I am a 6-time self-published author. The brand new book coming out on Sunday. We'll get to that later, maybe. And outside of that, I have a master's degree in psychology, a master's and bachelor's psychology. I did a lot of time in the field in psych wards, counseling, rehab centers, you name it. That's part of my background. And a military background as well, 4 years, United States Navy, been to 23 countries. So I've done a lot in 41 years, man. Like I have 4 lifetimes, if you will. So, and I'm a husband and a father and, you know, community activist, if you will. Things like that.
Yeah, I love it because you have such a varied background, and yet it all kind of comes together with this idea of spreading inspiration, spreading knowledge to the community. So why don't we take it one at a time, and maybe you can tell us especially about your brand new book that's coming out soon, I think in just a few days, right? That's the modern day griots and griots, the new generation. First, tell us about the book, what inspired it, and maybe explain what is a griot.
Yeah, sure. So telling you about the book, trying to put it in the elevator pitch, right? So my partner and I, his name is Kofi Piche, out of Mississippi. I'm in Louisiana. Both of us started 4 months ago with a podcast. So the modern day griot is a podcast. After our first 2 episodes, he called me on the phone like, bro, let's do a book to go with the podcast. And I was like, I had no plans on writing the book this year. That was not on my vision board, right? But we have good chemistry naturally, and we play off each other on air on our podcast. So I said, let's do it. It was meant to be a very small project. And then the ideas just grew, and before you know, we had a full-out book, right? To break it down, the griot in the old African tradition, talk about ancient times, every person in the tribe had a role. The griot role was to be the walking, talking, like Google or the library, encyclopedia. He was the keeper of the tales, all the battles they won and lost, who won, who lost, what they took, as they invented things, created things, lost things. He was, as they travel place to place, he kept those things going for the newer generation to know their history, know what you come from, know your background, good and bad. So the modern day griot, because the griots in the old times, they did it through storytelling, like oral tradition, through writing, through dance, through music, instrumentation. They had so many different ways they demonstrated these stories. So the modern day griot, that's us doing what we're doing right now. You're a podcaster, you're a storyteller, you're a griot. If you're an entertainer, if you're a comedian, if you're a rapper. So a lot of us have these roles and we don't realize, like, hey, I'm a griot. And so our show is about showing the new people of this generation to take that moniker on and go forward with it. And on my individual platform, I love to ask my guests, whether they're a New York Times bestseller or self-published, the first question is, how do you feel about being a modern day griot? And I love their responses. Because most times they have never thought about that.
Right. Yeah. What are some of the responses that you've gotten from people?
Well, the people that's familiar with the African tradition of it, they understand African history, they go right into it and they're proud, they take it on. Those that's not so familiar, they kind of like taken aback, like, I never even thought about that. You know, so it's kind of a mixed response, but I love asking that question. I love putting it on their mind. That
I love it too, because a griot, you know, I remember learning about in history class, but it encompasses so much more than just storytelling, like you said. And also, I think most of us tend to think about stories as entertainment, but as you put it, I mean, it's such a different perspective. It's about passing on history, helping people think about the future. Really, like, I love how you said, like, modern day Google. I mean, it's so much more than just entertaining people with stories. So what?
I was talking to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is your show. I happen to talk a lot. I'm sorry. I was talking to an elder today about this book I read last month. It's a fictional book, but in it, he has griots in the book. But these children are groomed. That's the key word. You barely hear that word anymore. They're groomed from small ages to be the griot. They're made to study world maps and made to study all of these old ancient texts because they see some kind of aptitude in you at an early age, and we're going to shape and mold you to be this role. But in today's society, everything is more like, oh, do what you want, be what you want, yeah, do what you want to do. And you have people that have skills and abilities, but they're not honed any particular thing. It's just, whatever. And so we see the downfall because of that.
So what do you think it is? Do you think it's that maybe we as a community aren't really looking after the children to kind of, you know, in order to be able to take those skills and help them develop it, we have to really be paying attention to the kids and being able to nurture that?
As I mentioned, I'm a father as well, right? So, but to my parenting friends, we debate all the time about some of the greatest people we know in history in their craft. A lot of times their parents put them on that track. Tiger Woods, the Jacksons, Serena Venus Williams. We have in basketball recently, LeVar Ball, 3 sons. To get one child at a professional level is like a needle in a haystack. But for you to make multiple kids of that caliber, that says a lot about your parenting, in my opinion. But we're so liberal and loose now. It's like, oh, just do what you want. We don't need discipline. We don't need structure. You want to go play PlayStation? Go ahead and play PlayStation. Like, no. You got to take the time to practice this thing for hours on end per day. I love the Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers. Talk about the 10,000-hour rule. I love that. It's part of my first book. The 10,000 hours to master a craft. Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry. I can name 40 people. They're the top of their craft, and we all marvel at them. But we would never do that ourselves. And we wouldn't do our kids like that either.
Well, so let's talk about finding motivation, inspiring kids to follow their dreams. Where does your motivation come from? Because as you mentioned, you have a 6th book coming out. But we don't want to forget about those other books you wrote about. You have 5 self-help books. Where do you get your inspiration from?
You know, out of all my years being a public person, like 15 plus years, that's always the most difficult question to answer everywhere I go. Only because in my working memory, I've never been like not motivated for something. Now, what it was always evolved as I got older, but that thing in my heart, in my mind, is always, since 4 years old, it was martial arts. As my mom, night and day, my whole entire bedroom was just martial arts. And then it became basketball, 10 years old. From 10 years old to my 20s, my whole life was just immersed in basketball. Then it became fitness training. And now we're talking about books and scholarship and being the educator, being the instructor. So the aim changes, but I've always been so self-driven. I don't need much pat on the back. I don't need much, come on, Sean, you can do it. I just need people to get out the way. Let me go. I don't need much to get me going. If it's something that I want, nothing's going to stop me from doing it. So it's hard to relate to unmotivated people to motivate them, because it's like, I can't. When I get up at 2 in the morning, my mind is thinking about something. I don't know what it's like to wander around the street, just aimlessly walking, nowhere to go, nobody's expecting you, nobody's looking for you. You just, I don't know what that's like. I can't relate to that. So to put myself in that shoe, to motivate them is a very difficult task.
So what do you say to people who are having trouble finding their passion, or maybe they have something, but they're, you know, they're kind of stuck. They don't know what to do with it. Maybe they have something that they're really interested in, but they don't know what the next step is. What would you say to them to tell them how to go about following their dream? Kind of like you were talking about the mechanics of how do you actually do that?
Yeah, but the first thing in my first book is called "What's Your Kick? The Guide to Unlocking Your Passion." Right. The first chapter is about tapping back in. If you're an adult with a family, you're probably so far from your early inklings of what you like to do. You've been a long time parent, it becomes about your child going to practice and your child doing this, and you got bills to pay. You forget, what do I love on my free time, what I like to do? If I got 2 weeks off, what am I going to do? If I had extra income, what would I even do with it, right? So the first thing is tapping back into that child mentality, child voice. What were you initially naturally good at? What did people compliment you on? Like, man, you're pretty good at that. And I go back to it and kind of like lean into it. Ask people around you, your older family members. When I was a kid, what was I doing? On Saturday morning, what did I do Saturday morning? What did I do after school? When I put the book bag down, what did I do naturally? It's kind of like tap back into that childhood joy, curiosity, because that gives you 10,000 hours. You were curious. When I was a kid, I was the only child growing up. I could play basketball by myself all night until my grandfather got me an actual like this spotlight. I'll be out there till 9, 10 o'clock at night. I'm just shooting, just forever. I'm just so curious about it. And like Kobe Bryant talked about the senses, he loved the smell of the basketball. He loved the sound of the net. Like, these sensory things made him play for so many hours per day.
So what do you think takes us away from that? Like you said, like just the everyday life and trying to kind of get by and survive.
Yeah. As you get older, if you're crazy about painting, for example, you're crazy about painting. You get older, and now you got bills, you got responsibilities, you get a spouse, you get children. It's like, okay, I can't just stay locked away in the basement and just doing my paint. I have to function in society. And then as it starts to mount, you get further and further from, when the last time did I even paint? When did I even buy paint? When have I gone to an art exhibit? Do I even talk to other painters? It becomes such a gulf between your love and what you're doing to make money to survive. Because most of us can't sustain our life off of our love, right? And that's the tragedy of life sometimes.
Right, but I love how you're kind of helping people reconnect to that joy and that childhood curiosity, like you said, and it also, like you said, also kind of comes back to community. About, you can ask people around you and ask people that have known you for a long time to help you reconnect with things you were interested in, and also talking about inspiring kids. I saw recently on Instagram where you went and you were there to welcome kids back to school, and that's something you've done before, and give them that positive message to start off the school year. Why is it so important to get involved with the community and kind of inspire the next generation?
Well, when I was a kid going to school in the 80s and the 90s, right? I don't want to date myself, but I never saw that. I never saw that once in my whole time in school. To get off a school bus, and community leaders are there like a pep rally before a football game, high-fiving you, slap you on the back. Yeah, man, like, to get you charged up for the day. Most times as a kid going to school, I never did like waking up. I was never a morning person. You all like rubbing your eyes, like, oh man, I'm going. It's just this drudgery about school. To have some actual excitement and get the brain going before I get into the classroom. That's I love that concept when I saw it years ago. Like in bigger, I live in a small place. I see Chicago, New York, Philadelphia. I'm like, why can't we do that here in some kind of way? And that's when the wheels started turning. Like, let's bring that to this small place, and let's get them motivated and inspired. Cause we're in Louisiana, we always 49 or 50 in education. We always at the bottom of the map. Reading scores, science scores, math scores. All of our schools are mostly C-rated, D-rated schools and below. So we're trying to change the perception of that.
I can.
That's why it's so important.
I'm originally from North Carolina, and we were always right there at the bottom. Unless you're right around one of the colleges or universities, the scores were right there at the bottom. And I think that's so amazing that you're getting kids excited about school and trying to kind of really turn that perception around and get them motivated. And somebody has just had a comment. We have something like that here in Louisville. It's called Flash Dads. Oh, that sounds pretty awesome. I love hearing these stories from different parts of the country because it's so important. Even kids who aren't in big cities or they're not in the ones where programs like this are happening, to try and keep them motivated.
You know, Kofi and I doing this podcast and this book together, him in Mississippi, I'm in Louisiana. Both of these states are known for being so far behind academically. And you have us two guys. He's written multiple books himself. I've written multiple myself. Both of us are trying to make this academic thing look cool and look fun and look refreshing and show the kids it is cool to have intellect and to be able to talk intelligently about various topics and learn about science and math and the Astros or whatever it is. Like, that's a cool thing to do.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Another about how kids would love that kind of like that pep rally and that excitement. I mean, that's something kids really love.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make sure we have time because I'm just looking at time and we haven't really talked that much about your podcast. We mentioned it some. Sean P Presents, and like you said, you interview authors, editors, podcasters, so many creatives. What's a common thread that connects all of those interviews? I mean, you talked about trying to get them to think about themselves as being griots. What are some of the things that you kind of learned through doing all these different interviews?
Well, once again, it's back to storytelling. Whether it's a film director or a podcaster, there's still a beginning, middle, and end, right? There's still so much pre-production, post-production going on. There's still sometimes at a major level, it's a lot of politics in the background of what you can and can't put out, what you can and can't do and say. And then it's getting to the heart of what they want to say. I love asking the question, okay, this book is 500 pages long. What didn't make the book? You told me you did 15 years of research. What was left on the cutting room floor? I love asking those kind of questions. I love being unorthodox in my questions because some of these authors, they're going on all these tours. They have 100,000 interviews. I don't want to be just the next one. I want to make them say like, wow, I never thought about that. I've never heard that. Whenever I hear that, that's like a three-pointer to me. My mind get that dopamine like a three-point shot. I'm like, great. Every time they say, oh, man, I'm like, yes. On the inside, you know. I'm like, yes, yes. I pride myself on my journalism. I take it seriously. I pride myself on my questions. I pride myself on the research and homework I do for an interview. People will never imagine what I do for an hour-long interview, how many things I do leading up to that 1 hour. It's probably obnoxious and not needed, but I just feel I want to be well prepared.
Well, tell us about that. What's your process of getting ready for an interview?
Ooh, good question.
Three-pointer.
Swish. If I have 1 hour, most times it's an hour interview on one book, I try to go and find different things about that author way before that book even came out. I want to find out about the early parts of their life, how they became even being the author to begin with, where they go to school, what was that journey like. It's a lot of things most times in the background that lead up to the book, before the book even came. Maybe they had little small projects we don't even know about. We think it's their first book, but it's not. A lot of those things happen in the background. It helped me formulate unique questions. Some of their family history sometimes. They got celebrity family, people in their family we don't know about. Like, wow, you're so-and-so's niece. Now it makes sense to you do all that kind of stuff stuff in the background. And on social media, I pride myself. I will scroll back much as I can to your first post. And I ask the question, they always like, how you even found that? How'd you dig that up? How'd you even know that, right? So I just love doing those kind of things, man. Just give me so much more intimacy with the author. If they have other previous interviews, I try to avoid it as much as I can. But I might listen to an interview here or there to hear a couple little things they saying. But I try to avoid doing that as much as I can. Because subconsciously, I don't want to ask anything anybody else ever asked this person.
And I'm sure they love that. Like, it must be, it probably gets kind of boring for them having all these.
That's what I'm saying. You're doing the same thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any
And this is,
favorite interviews that you've done?
yeah, sure. Before I say that, though, if they have a real popular book, I'm going to ask them about an unpopular book that they have.
I love it.
Because sometimes the unpopular book is actually their favorite book.
Right.
It's just the publishing company put a lot of money behind this book. So we all see it at the airport, we see it on TV.
Right.
But that first book, their heart and soul was in that project. It didn't get funded. Right? As far as my favorite guest, yeah. Yeah, my favorite guest of all times. I love Dr. Imani Perry. Crazy about Dr. Imani Perry. Anything she does, I want to read it. And whenever she accepted my invitation, I was just floored. I couldn't believe she said yes. I still can't believe she said yes. My platform is not like a huge megalodon platform. So for them to say yes to my platform is like almost like why? Like I even ask them sometimes in private, like, why'd you say yes to my show? But Dr. Imani Perry is my favorite all time. Robert Jones Jr. from The Prophets. That one show is the one that really put me on the map, I think. Like when I finally did that show, people was like, this guy's serious. Okay. Also, the author named Anita Kopax from the book Shallow Waters. It's a big time publication. When I did that show, it really got me some good footing as well as far as my platform, what I'm doing. It got some eyes to my page.
Right. Which is always great. I mean, you're doing such great work. It's nice that when you get recognition for what you're doing, and we appreciate what you're doing and you taking the time to talk with us. It's been so fun talking with you. And so just to wrap it up, I want to ask what is next for you? Because you're so creative and you have all these different channels that you're operating on. What's next?
Okay, so what's next for me is probably in early October, my next book will be coming. So during the pandemic, I wrote 4 books in the pandemic. They're all in Kindle format. So people have asked for years, man, put it in paperback. So we're finally putting all 4 books in one paperback. And in all of my books, I have my friends writing the foreword, afterword, prologue, things like that. Dr. Wade is in the building. She's doing my prologue on all 4 of the books. And my friend Matt James, he's doing the forward in all the books. And my partner Kofi's writing in the books as well. So we're going to have all 4 projects, brand new forwards, brand new afterwards. A couple other friends come and help me as well. Reggie Reed's in the building. He's a big guy. Reggie Reed's. He's going to be in one of the books as well, man. So that'll be in early October to be the next project. It's going to be called Sean P. The Reader, Collection of Thoughts.
I love it. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that and share it in our stories. And I have to ask, because I saw Kayla McDaniel says she's going to find that Dr. Imani Perry interview to replay today. Are all of these on Instagram?
Yeah.
Where can you find
them? They're all on Instagram Live. Just go to my page and just scroll back to your heart content. You'll find all my interviews. They're all there, easy to reach, and yeah.
Well, we'll make sure the ones that you mentioned, we'll make sure to share in our stories as well, so people can go and take a look at those. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. This was such a great interview, and we appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time, the platform. Thanks for everybody that's watching. Time is the most important currency right now, so thanks for your investment.
So true. And for anybody that's joined us late, don't worry. This will be up on Instagram in just a few minutes and later on our YouTube channel so you can watch the whole thing. Thanks, everybody.